Mina was always busy checking social media on one phone while ignoring calls from her family on the other. One day her grandmother fell sick, but Mina didn't notice the missed calls. She realized then that real connections matter more than online likes. From that day, she learned to put her phone down and be present. Mina lived a life illuminated by the glow of two screens, her world neatly divided between the sleek black rectangle in her left hand and the identical one in her right. The first phone was her portal to a universe of curated perfection, a constant stream of notifications, likes, and the comments that validated her existence. Through its lens, she was a globetrotter, a foodie, a fashion icon, a persona meticulously crafted with filters and the clever captions. Each ping was a small burst of dopamine, a confirmation that somewhere, someone was paying attention. Her fingers moved with an unconscious grace, scrolling, tapping, and swiping through feeds, her mind absorbed in the digital tapestry of other people's lives while she broadcast her own. The second phone, however, was a quieter device. It was the one designated for the real world, the one that held the numbers of her family and a few odd friends. More often than not, it lay face down on her desk or was buried deep within her handbag, its screen dark and its ringer silenced. The calls and the messages that arrived on this phone felt like interruptions, unwelcome intrusions from a life she was trying to escape, or at least, trying to reimagine through the more glamorous filter of her online presence. Her days were a blur of notifications. A like on her latest brunch photo in Bali felt more significant than a text from her mother asking what she wanted for dinner. A comment from a stranger in another country praising her outfit felt more validating than a voicemail from her brother sharing a funny story. Mina had convinced herself that this digital applause was a measure of her worth, that the number of followers she had was a direct reflection of her importance in the world. She was connected to thousands, yet deeply disconnected from the few who truly mattered. Her online world was vibrant, immediate, and endlessly entertaining. Her real world felt mundane, slow, and demanding by comparison. The constant juggling act between her two phones became her new normal. She would sit at the dinner table with her family, one hand under the table scrolling through her feed offering vague monosyllabic answers to the questions, while her mind was 1,000 miles away crafting the perfect reply to a comment. She had mastered the art of seeming present while being mentally absent. Her attention fractured, her focus split between the physical room and the boundless digital space. The ignored calls from her family began to pile up, each one a silent testament to her growing detachment. A missed call from her dad, probably just to check in. Another from her grandmother, likely wanting to share a recipe or a piece of neighborhood gossip. Mina would glance at the notifications later, a fleeting pang of guilt quickly suppressed by the more urgent and the exciting buzz from her other phone. She would tell herself she'd call but later rarely came. One Tuesday afternoon, while Mina was engrossed in a live stream, her second phone began to vibrate insistently. It was a call from her father. She silenced it without a second thought, annoyed by the interruption. The phone buzzed again, and again. A string of missed calls, followed by a rapid succession of text messages, began to populate the lock screen. Mina, irritated, finally picked it up, her brow furrowed in frustration. The messages were short, frantic. "Call me, it's Grandma." "Mina, answer the phone. Urgent." A cold knot of dread began to form in her stomach. She had been so lost in her digital world, so focused on the fleeting validation of strangers, that she had ignored the increasingly desperate pleas from her own family. She finally called her father back, her heart pounding against her ribs. His voice was strained, thick with a worry that chewed through the phone line. Her grandmother had had a bad fall. She was in the hospital. For hours, Mina's family had been trying to reach her, their calls and the messages going unanswered. Lost in the digital noise she had prioritized, the news hit her like a physical blow. Suddenly, the likes, the comments, the perfectly curated images on her social media feed seemed laughably insignificant. They were hollow echoes in a world that had just been shaken by a stark, undeniable reality. The carefully constructed digital persona she had built felt like a fragile house of cards, collapsing under the weight of her negligence. As she rushed to the hospital, the silence in her car was deafening, broken only by the phantom buzz of a phone she had left behind. The face of her grandmother, warm and decreased with laughter, filled her mind. She remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell, the smell of cookies baking in her kitchen, the comforting width of her hand. These were the real, tangible moments that constituted our life, the connections that truly mattered. And she had traded them for the empty calories of online approval. Sitting in the sterile, quiet waiting room of the hospital, surrounded by the hushed, anxious energy of her family, Mina felt the full impact of her choices. She saw the worry etched on her father's face and the tears in her mother's eyes. They were unit, bound by love and concern, and she had willingly excluded herself from it. She realized with a sickening clarity that while she had been collecting followers, she had been neglecting her family. While she had been chasing virtual likes, she had been missing out on real love. The screen of her phone had become a wall, separating her from the people who were her foundation. The realization was a painful, clarifying moment. The digital world she had immersed herself in was an illusion, a beautiful but ultimately empty distraction from the richness of real life. It offered the appearance of connection without the substance, the feeling of community without the responsibility. The true currency of life wasn't followers or likes, but shared moments, genuine support, and the irreplaceable presence of loved ones. The days that followed were a quiet revelation. Mina watched her grandmother slowly recover, her spirit resilient even as her body healed. She spent hours by her bedside, not scrolling through a feed, but holding her hand, listening to her stories, and simply being there. She saw the relief and the gratitude in her family's eyes as she re-engaged. As she put her phone away, and offered her full, undivided attention. The experience fundamentally shifted her perspective. She understood that her obsession with her online persona had been a form of escapism, a way to avoid the complexities and the imperfections of real relationships. But it was in those very imperfections and the worry, the care, the shared vulnerability that the deepest connections were forged. From that day forward, Mina learned to put her phones down. She didn't delete her accounts or forsake technology entirely, but she re-established its place in her life. It was now a tool, not a master. Her second phone, once ignored, became her primary connection to the people who mattered. She answered their calls. She was present for family dinners, her attention on the conversations around her, not on the screen in her lap. She discovered the joy of a walk in the park without the need to document it, the pleasure of a meal enjoyed for its taste rather than its photogenic qualities. She started rebuilding the bridges she had let crumble, one real, heartfelt conversation at a time. Mina learned that the most valuable notifications aren't the ones that light up a screen, but the ones that light up a person's face when they see you. The best connections aren't measured in follower counts, but in the depth of shared experience and the mutual love. Moral: technology is useful, but real life happens outside the screen.